With the session drawing closer to an end, we're now asking senators to reflect on their work over the last few months. This first-term senator says he's delivering for the Northland. With me now is DFL Senator Grant Hauschild. Senator, thank you for being here.
Thanks so much for having me.
Now, Senator, a focus of yours is bipartisanship. You're a leader on the Civility Caucus, and you're part of the state's only bipartisan town hall this year. So at a time like this, when it can feel like we're politically isolated and there can be some political danger in reaching across the aisle, why do you do it?
Well, I think people expect it. I represent a district that is represented by 2 Republicans in the House and myself as a Democrat in the Senate. It's a district that voted for Donald Trump at the presidential level, but Amy Klobuchar and Tina Smith at the Senate level. So these are folks that I think vote across the aisle. They vote for the person, and they vote for people that they think are going to deliver for them. And that's really what I'm focused on. And I have to make sure that I'm working with my House colleagues and others across the aisle in order to do that.
That's right. It's not just the Senate. All right. Another recurring theme of yours is a love for town halls. You recently had one in Ely that was really well attended. So what do you like about that format, and what have you learned?
What I really love about town halls is in these small towns that I represent, folks come from all over and they get to talk to each other in addition to me. So we get to have a conversation, not just a sort of panel of questions straight at me. And I think that's really interesting because there's a lot of issues that folks have differing opinions on. And rather than just me answer, we get to sort of have a circular conversation with folks in the community. And as you can imagine, whether it's mining issues or, regulatory issues, there's things that people have differing opinions, and we have to make sure we're having a candid conversation about those topics.
And it also lets you know what community resources there if they're part of the conversation. So that's a really great point. During a recent floor session, you sought to add an amendment to an omnibus bill that would keep the U.S. Hockey Hall of Fame in Eveleth. So was it a town hall that brought this to your attention, or where did this idea come from?
Yeah, the U.S. Hockey Hall of Fame has been in Eveleth for years. It was really selected because of the rich history of hockey on the Iron Range, and I was informed by a couple of citizens who are involved in that effort that there was something happening where folks were looking at possibly relocating it. So that really rang the alarm bells for me because this is a really important part of the history on the Iron Range. So I did some digging and I really looked into it, and I thought, you know what, if they're going to relocate the U.S. Hockey Hall of Fame, then let's make sure that state dollars don't get utilized for that move. If they want to do it, they should raise private funds, they should figure out a different way of doing it, but the state shouldn't endorse that type of move.
Okay. An amendment you did have success with was relating to extending unemployment benefits for miners. And true to you, you met with these workers who had been laid off, and your co-author of the amendment was from the other caucus. However, it's not across the finish line yet. The House still hasn't passed it. So what do you want your House colleagues to know?
Well, I went and met with the steelworkers that were laid off. I brought the majority leader up there. I think it's really important in these moments that impact people's lives so personally that we take the time to go talk to them directly and let them know that we're lending our support as their legislators. So I wanted to make sure and do that first and foremost. I also reached across the aisle with Senator Farnsworth and got to work on the extension in unemployment. This is really important because if we have bipartisan support, it's that much more likely to make it across the finish line at the end of the day, especially given the fact that the House is split, right? And so my message to the House is, let's get this done. We have bipartisan support out of the Senate. It was nearly unanimous. Now the House can act and we can go to conference and figure this out.
Okay. My next question somewhat relates to mining, but more in the sense of data mining. So during a committee meeting on a proposed tax for social media companies, you gave one of the most impassioned responses I have seen yet. So what is it about that topic that you really connected with?
Well, I think when we talk about social media companies, this is really an addicting thing, right? We see folks on their phones all the time. I mean, I'm one of them myself. But when I see that and the fact that these folks are not really paying their fair share for the personal data that I think they are taking from individuals in Minnesota. So what we're saying is these 14 or 15 social media companies that are some of the wealthiest companies in the world should really pay their fair share in Minnesota if they're going to take Minnesotans' personal data. And I equated it to mining, right? When we mine taconite, when we look at precious metals in Minnesota, and in fact, even helium in northern Minnesota now, we make sure that we tax those extractions because they're taking something from us, and we should get our fair share as community members and people as part of that extraction. I think it's the same thing with personal data. We're just moving it into the new century of saying, you're going to take our personal data, you're getting it for free, you're able to do some advertising and make money on this. Let's make sure that Minnesota gets our fair share from this.
Right? Conversation was about updating our tax code and how the economy works now.
Exactly. Exactly. I mean, you're always, and that's what I love most about being on the tax committee, is you're always looking at, okay, this is the way we have done it to make sure we have the revenue we need in order to provide the core services we do. But economies change, people change, technology changes. So we always have to update the way we do our taxes to make sure that it's fair and equitable.
Well, speaking of changes and updating, you wrote an op-ed about permitting reform, and you said it's all about jobs. So take me through the issue and any proposed solutions you have.
Yeah, when Governor Perpich, first ran, his slogan was jobs, 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 and I think that couldn't be further from the truth, or it couldn't be closer to the truth. Excuse me. We need to make sure that at the end of the day, we are providing folks the opportunity to provide for their families, and that means making sure that Minnesota is competitive both nationally and now globally. It means making sure that folks on the ground, when they experience government, whether they're an entrepreneur that's opening a small business or perhaps an industry that wants to open up a shop that could provide hundreds of jobs, that we in Minnesota have a process that works for them. That's what permitting reform is about. It's about a process not to skirt any environmental laws, not to skirt labor laws, because certainly those two things are very important to Minnesotans, but we should be a little bit more efficient and be competitive with other states and globally if we want jobs in Minnesota.
It's funny that you mentioned a slogan, jobs, 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 because there's a slogan that comes in my mind when I think about you. A national politician said, I have a plan for that. And it seems like that fits in with you very well, too, because I looked at who authored the most bills in the Senate this session, and it was you. So you have a plan for that. How and why did you accomplish that?
I've been involved in politics since I was really young, about 13 or 14 years old, and I have a lot of experience working for congressmen, U.S. senators in the White House administration for the Obama administration, and so I really kind of know how government works. And so when I got here as a freshman, I really did, frankly, have a plan on what the things that I wanted to accomplish that I thought mattered most for my community. And I think when you do that work and show that you understand how to get the job done, other folks gravitate towards that, and they say, you know what, I think that person knows how to get the job done and knows what he's doing. So frankly, I sometimes have to talk to my staff to say, okay, we're getting a lot of requests here. We're getting a lot of folks that have bills that they feel are really important. We need to prioritize, but also I do want to take it on because I do think I can lend myself to helping accomplish the goals that folks have. So that's how it works. We keep pushing. We work really hard in my office, and I try to make sure that my staff feel appreciated because it is a lot of work.
Okay. What would you consider to be your biggest achievement this session?
I think it goes back to the steelworker unemployment extension. There are 630 steelworkers right now that are facing a real uncertain future. We don't know what's going to happen with mining. We don't know what's going to happen with tariffs. And these are folks that are really some of the biggest parts of our economy on the Iron Range and in northern Minnesota. Consider the fact that the equivalent of this shutdown on the Iron Range is as if Target or 3M shut down in the Twin Cities. I mean, that's the economic impact that we are facing with these shutdowns. And so I want to make sure that at the end of the day, these folks stay in our community. They could go try to find jobs elsewhere, but then we lose that skilled workforce that could reopen these mines eventually. And it's not that easy to get that workforce back in a place like Ely or Virginia up on the Iron Range. So this is about keeping the families in our communities, keeping our schools full, keeping food on the table for Iron Rangers, and that's what we're going to deliver this session.
Speaking of, this session, what about next session? What do you hope to achieve then?
Well, it's going to be a policy year next year, and so I think there's a lot of things we could work on. One of them in particular is the helium discovery that we have in northern Minnesota. This year I've been working really diligently with all the stakeholders on how we can produce a framework both from a tax structure as well as a regulatory and rulemaking process for that helium discovery, because in Minnesota we don't have a gas framework. We've never done gas extraction in Minnesota. And so we've worked through the process. We've gone through all the committees. Unfortunately, just given everything that's happening this year, I'm not exactly sure if we'll get all of that accomplished this year, but it's been a really good start, sort of having these conversations, getting people up to speed on sort of all the complications that go into creating a new regulatory framework. And then I think next year, because it'll be policy focused, we can really make sure that we do that right.
Okay, Senator, anything else you'd like to say while we have you here?
No, other than I really enjoy this work. I mean, I really love representing northern Minnesota. I really think we need to make sure that we're punching above our weight up in greater Minnesota and northern Minnesota, because sometimes it can feel like the Twin Cities and the suburbs get all the attention. And there are so many amazing things about northern Minnesota, whether it's the outdoor recreation and the tourism, whether it's mining or the timber that we provide for the critical things we use every day. Northern Minnesota is a special place, and without it, Minnesota wouldn't be the same. So I'm really proud of where I represent, and I'm going to keep delivering as much as I can.
All right, thank you, Senator.
Thank you.